This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Ampire. Hey babies, the babies, the babies, the babies, the babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. Happy Thursday, everybody. Big preview day. John Keim's coming up in a second. One of my favorite things to do every year, of course, when it's Philly week, is to have my friend John Kincade from The Fanatic in Philadelphia on. We do a trade. I go on his show during the game week. He comes on this show during the week, and we share thoughts about the Commanders and the Eagles. So stay tuned for that. But let's start and stay on the home front. Here's my weekly visit with John Keim of ESPN and the John Keim Report. I'll start with the news, which is, and you had reported this a week ago, and we've been getting hints of it, but weren't sure it was going to happen, was John Allen they did open a practice window for him. I don't believe it means he's going to play this week. However, him coming back to play this season is realistic now.
Very realistic. I think, Bram, to me, the scenario would be, last week, and obviously in hearing this leading up to this, right? And then finally reporting it last week, what it sounded like, use this week and next week to practice and get ready, then play in the last two games. That, to me, would be the scenario that I would envision at this point, and then get ready for what they hope, of course, is the postseason. So that's appears to be how it would be trending. I don't think you can put him out there after this long an absence after just a couple of days of practice.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it's a really big deal if he comes back for them and is effective, obviously, which we don't know the answer to. But if he's anything close to what he's been in the past, and I know a lot of people kind of get on him about his play because he's not a superstar defensive tackle, this team needs him.
He's still a quality NFL defensive tackle as a starter, right? And, I know because, they weren't stopping the run. Well, they haven't really stopped the run all year, right? So you can't say that it was. Now, would you like those tackles to be more dynamic like they were when they, a couple years ago? Well, of course. And I think, can he get back to that? I don't know. However, he's a quality NFL starter. You don't benefit from losing those guys. And so, if nothing else, it strengthens their depth. So, you have Johnny Newton, the rookie, who's been kind of inconsistent, playing next to Deron Payne. You have someone who can handle double teams a little better, and John Allen, a lot more consistent. And it just strengthens your depth as you go to try and make a run here.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's talk about last week real quick before we get into this week. In reviewing the films, we haven't had really a chance to talk about it. I don't think that game should have ended up being that close. In fact, I think they should have won by 20 points. Yeah. And so I don't know where you landed on rewatching it, and because I know this narrative of, they got lucky. Yeah, in some ways, I guess they did because the Saints didn't convert on a 2-point conversion, but it was their own mistakes. Otherwise, that would have been a blowout.
Yeah, correct. I mean, there were 3 opportunities with Terry McLaurin that were really, really good that could have put that game away really early, right? And, Jaden overthrows on one, Terry can't handle the other, and a pass interference penalty, frankly, should have been called on the third. So those opportunities, miss them, but they were there. Not even just like a tough throw, those were there. And then you have Frankie Luvu dropping a pick on that last drive that's right in his hands. That's another play where it's you got to make that play, right? So there are a handful of those where you say, some of the roughing penalties. Now,
one of them I thought was extraordinarily tight.
Correct.
Yeah, one of them was really tight.
Dan Quinn's point to us on Monday was, you've got to go lower. So basically, don't give them a chance to call it. Go lower. Just aim lower. Know who your quarterback is. Go lower. That said, those are kind of iffy in those extended drives. So, I'd say there are a couple plays where it's but what's funny, because in blowouts, that's how it goes. Those plays are made, and it's you can say, well, if you don't make this play, then it's not a blowout. But so the end result is you're in a tight game because you didn't make some of those plays. But yeah, it easily, listen, look at the stats. They were dominating everything. And they, and then they just, Rattler comes in, hits a couple plays, and next thing you know, it's a game.
I think one of those McLaurin touchdowns, game's over. It would have been,
yes.
And badly it would have
Yes.
ended that way. But whatever. It's done is done. I know. I thought this was really interesting today. We're taping this on Wednesday. Dan Quinn does his midweek press conference. He's very verbose. Like, he'll answer every question and typically give a lot of time to every question, which I appreciate about what he does. He was asked one today about having been close against playoff teams, but not beating a playoff team yet,
right,
with an opportunity this weekend, again, to do it. And his answer was 3 seconds long. Did you read anything into him not taking the time to explain that this is a big deal this weekend?
I think they understand, right? And I think they understand what this game means. And it's not just, the whole goal is to make the postseason. They can make the postseason regardless of what happens Sunday, because you still, you beat Atlanta, you beat Dallas, and you're automatically in.
But
I will say, I also think for the growth of this team, it's a great chance. And for most of the year, when people talk about measuring stick games, I kind of dismiss those, because I think every game measures something. Last week it was, you're coming off a bye, and then you get into a tight game that you don't realize. What does it say about you? Well, I think this week the growth of the team can be seen here. Was that first game a byproduct of short week, banged up team, waiting desperately for that bye, quarterback kind of getting back into his rhythm, for whether it's the ribs, whether it's a lack of practice, whatever it is, they weren't the same team that we saw a few weeks earlier. Was it just that, or are the Eagles just that much better? I think so. To me, it's like where this measures is what's the gap between these teams, and can you close that gap just by playing well? So, I mean, it's a really good game to measure that. And plus, Bramley, they haven't beaten a team that's at this level, which is a big deal.
Kind of the point.
Kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
However, only 2 teams have beaten the Eagles too. So
that's right.
So it's not like, but second chance at them, divisional opponent. You had a shot against them on the road.
You're at home,
and you had a shot. It's 12-10 midway through the fourth quarter. You have a fourth down, and if you convert or if you kick a field goal, take your pick. And if you execute the play, you probably convert it. Or if you kick a field goal, you probably make it, and you're up. But the point is, it was a tight game for 3.5 quarters, and so you're right there. So, I think if they go out and win, it says a lot.
I agree. I think a lot of people keep talking about it. I think people are losing sight of what this is, because everyone keeps talking about, well, if they just beat Atlanta or they just beat Dallas or they beat both, they're definitively going to be in the playoffs, and therefore this game doesn't matter. I don't think so. I think this game does matter. I think this is one, I'll hear out, if they lose 23-20 and it's really close, and it showed that they're right there with them again. But I think it says a lot more if they go out and win. This is an opportunity to show, through this whole year, we've been asking them, all right, show me what you guys are.
Right.
Well, I now know what they are. We're at the point now where I think it's okay to think they can beat those guys at home. Why can't they beat those guys
sure.
at home?
I think they can, for sure. I think it's going to be tough. I don't think you can commit as many penalties as they've been committing the last 3 weeks and get away with that win. They cannot have the kicking game mistakes that they've been having, and I think expect to walk away and win. I think one thing they need to do is start taking the ball away. It's stopping Saquon Barkley is really tough, because his career has always been 2 yards, 3 yards, 40. Right? That's how he gets. That's what he's done for his career. Now he's behind a better line, so his 2-2-3 is now 4-4-6, and still 45, right? So I think that's going to be a tough thing. But yeah, I mean, here's the other thing. I think we know this team is not a finished product, right?
Of course.
They're not at the same level, but that doesn't mean you can't win this game. And now I will say, maybe they're playing chess here, and if they say, well, if you get blown out, then they'll be overconfident if they meet in the playoffs. I don't think that's happening.
No.
I don't think that's happening. But I do think I do agree with you. I think there's no reason you can't win this game. It is at home. You have a special quarterback who's back to playing the way we saw him earlier this year. Now the question to me then is, how much are you going to miss if Zach Ertz doesn't play? We already know Austin Eckler's out and Noah Brown is out. How do they compensate for that? And I think that's going to be something to watch for sure.
Yeah, I think here's in the beginning of the season, when they played Baltimore the first time, and we knew Baltimore's a really good team and probably going to be a playoff team. And this was a first, because of the start to the season, it was, okay, let's see them up against a really good team on the road. Let's find out what that looks like. And I don't actually think that game, not unlike when I was talking about the Saints game, I don't actually think that game was that close. I think the score was close. Right. And I thought Jaden played well in it, but I don't think it was that close. Skip ahead to Philadelphia and Pittsburgh that week. In both of those games, it could have won either one of them. They were undermanned, hurt, needed a bye, all the reasons that we already talked about. And so I excused it as, well, they lost to really good teams. They lost by a grand total of like 9 points. One of them they easily could have won, right? Easily could have won. So, but I excused it for all these other reasons. Right. At some point, and I know maybe it's too early to do it, at some point it turns and you have to start winning games like this, especially at home. So I know it's still year one, and I know they're not a finished product, and I know all of those things, but there is a part of me that is sitting here going, I know what you were, I know what you've gotten to, I know where you are now, post all those injuries and the time off, and now my expectations are, I think you can go toe-to-toe with these guys, and you're at home, you can win.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if these teams played 10 times, the Eagles are going to win the majority of them, because they have been better this year. They have a really good defense. Does not mean you can't win at home. And I will also say, I don't think we should make excuses for them going into the game. Like you said,
I don't want to make, that's where I'm at. No excuses.
No.
I keep hearing people say, well, they just have to win one more. What about this week? You know they can make the playoffs if they win this week.
Right. No. And I also think it can show, I think you can prove something as well.
Yes.
And I think here's the other thing. The fan base obviously is excited about what's going on this year. I think you get them a lot more excited to win a game like this, because then it shows that what they've done this year is take care of the teams you should take care of. And I think like winning at Cincinnati, winning at Arizona, I think those are tough places
Agreed.
to win. So like those are, I'm not going to dismiss those, but a lot of teams you say like, well, you should beat the Saints. Look at what they got. You should beat Tennessee. Should have beaten Dallas, but they've taken.
You got Carolina and Cleveland at the right time,
right? Yeah. And you took care of your business the right way. That says a lot about the growth of this team, because we did not see that in the past. The next step is beating a team like this, and yes. I know they're good, but like listen, Bram. Like I was going back and watching the game again this week. I watched all the runs. I watched Jaden's throws. Clearly there was something off in the pass game, whether it was just short week, you're banged up, you're beaten up, your ribs, your body, you needed a break, all that stuff. Like they just weren't the same offense. And now the last 2 weeks, despite the only 20 points against the Saints, there were many opportunities for the offense for more. So I think you're back into a better rhythm with that.
100%. Right. This is the team.
It's a different quarterback that they're going to see.
It's a different quarterback. It's a different team that they had from the beginning of the year. They have a shot here this weekend. I'm sick of hearing this. Like, well, they just got to win one of these final three. Why can't they win this one?
Right. I know they looked good against Pittsburgh last week, but the week before, they looked bad against Carolina, and you started to hear this stuff coming out of Philly about A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. And then the week later, they're the love couple, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's just things change week to week in this league, and so you can't just assume because they did this against Pittsburgh, they're going to do this here. You don't know. And again, I think this would be a great opportunity for them to get a big win at home.
Yes.
And generate momentum, not just to say that you're going to get to the playoffs, but hey, you know what? You got to watch out for that.
Multiple times during Ron's tenure, they won games like this. Actually, they beat Philadelphia when they were undefeated up on a night game. They beat Pittsburgh when they were undefeated in their first year, the weird COVID year. They beat Tampa off the Super Bowl. Remember, that was a big game. What never happened is that never carried over. I feel differently about this particular group and team if they were to do it. And I guess my bottom line point is this goes from a really good foundation, good story to, this is where this is actually going from here.
And I think the other thing, too, is you talk about, improvement and finding your identity as the season progresses. We're at that point where it's it's not unfair to expect, a really good showing on Sunday, right? So
100%.
Yeah, so I think, because if you're building towards something, then I think that's what happens. So I don't see any reason why they can't win this game. Now, again, the Eagles are really good. I love their defense. But
they are really good.
Yeah, but
Washington has a top 5 quarterback on their team right now, who last week, this got totally undersold in how the game ended and the calls and the sacks and the penalties, where it kept a game close that shouldn't have been close. He was outrageous.
He was really good.
He had 6 to 10 crazy athletic plays that separates him. And I don't know, people have not been going nuts about his performance because of the way the game ended and the narrative that they got lucky, and they lost sight of both of the touchdown passes to McLaurin were absurd.
Correct.
Both of them. He made 3 third or fourth down plays that there are a very few number of people that can actually do. The more I watched again, I went, oh, the Eagles haven't seen this guy yet.
Right.
Wait till they see this guy.
Right, and I had the same thought coming out of that game. They had a drive, their second touchdown drive was phenomenal. Because, that's the one where they had a 2nd and 20, 12 yards to Diami, 12 yards to Jamison Crowder, just drills the ball, steps into it, looks really good. It's the one where Zach Ertz has the one-handed catch, cap it off with a 3-yard to Terry. But there was also a 3rd and 2 where he gets outside and has to sprint for a first down to beat the linebacker to the spot, and he does it. That's one of those plays you're talking about. I don't know how many quarterbacks make that play there. It's 2 yards, but it's huge. So he did that routinely in that game, and it was this is the guy.
His instincts are unbelievable.
Very.
They're unbelievable. That's the uncoachable part of this.
Well,
his instincts are unbelievable.
And I think that's where when people talk about him trying to throw the ball away, it's well, what play do you point to and say, oh, you should have thrown it away here? Because there are a couple times where there was a 2nd down and 7, Bram, and he gets out of the pocket. Now it's a tight squeeze. He gets 6 yards. Another quarterback would have thrown it away, so it would be 3rd and 7. He gets 3rd and 1. So sometimes you're going to live with those. It's almost like you almost have to live with the -4, -7 sometimes because you're going to have multiple ones that get yards or pick up key plays.
I mean, I've done this on the radio with Cal the other day. I'll do it with you two here. I don't think the first touchdown to McLaurin was the way the first half was going. Whatever the Saints were doing, they made him indecisive with the ball. Washington also couldn't really run the ball very well. I want to give them credit. Their defensive game plan worked early, but not enough to stop him because he's a cheat code. He rushed it. This is now 3rd and goal from the 17, or 2nd and goal, whatever it is. He's rushing to the right to avoid pressure, runs all the way back to a left to buy time, drops the ball, picks it up, okay? He's surrounded by 2 Saints, steps in between 2 of them, throws a dart into traffic, where his receiver, 2 defenders there, and Terry McLaurin makes a catch. This is Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes stuff.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
And this fact that we're sitting here, that people aren't going, oh my God. He's doing it in his rookie year regularly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think from that game, too, because so much emphasis was on that last sequence with the clock stoppage and then the 2-point conversion, that some things got lost in the shuffle, and that's one of them. That was a phenomenal play. 8 seconds he extended the play. According to Next Gen Stats, it had a 16.1% chance of completion. There was very little separation there. The entire sequence there was terrific. And so, that's who he is. But the nice thing for them is, and we kind of asked Dan Quinn about this the other day, that you have a team that's banged up. You may not have Zach Ertz. You don't have Austin Eckler. You don't have Noah Brown. But you have a quarterback who is improving every week still. And so how much, if you don't have him the other day, well, they lose because he just made play after play after play. And so he's getting there at the time of the year where you now, you didn't want to have to lean on him so much. Now, at times they did, of course, but you didn't want to have to lean on him a ton. I think you're going to have to now because he can make plays and he's a special player.
He is a special player. All right, last thing. Just your general reaction to Kirk Cousins was benched. Michael Penix takes over for the Falcons, and just how that landed with you, because obviously that's turned into a very different game in a week and a half.
It sure has, and I don't think there's any surprise given how Kirk was playing. And just watching him play the last couple weeks, the snippets that I saw of him did not look good. And he can't move with the Achilles. There's not as much zip on his throws. There were some decisions he made that the previous week where it's what are you doing there? So it wasn't working. And for a team in a playoff hunt to change a quarterback at this time of the year says an awful lot, how bad it really is, because they are, as you know, they're reluctant to make those kind of moves with a veteran especially. So it makes me wonder also, because Raheem Morris has known Kirk for a long time and likes him. So that's
also a stable franchise that does that. That owner doesn't do crazy things. It'd be one thing if the Jets did it. It's another thing when Arthur Blank allowed that to happen.
Sure, for sure, especially when you gave him the money you did. But it also speaks to, I wonder what was being talked about among players and going to the coaches, what was being said, because we know that stuff happens. And where players seeing it listen, we love the guy, but he can't play right now. And I also wonder where Penix is at. And that's why it's almost good for this team that he's going to get a game in this week, so you can get a chance to see. Now, it's good for him because he gets a chance to get his feet wet, but, I don't know what difference he's going to make. I know they have a really good run game. That's what we know. And they have some weapons. We know that. Their defense isn't very good, and they're not playing well at all. But will he give them a spark? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was not surprising. I think I covered Kirk. I like Kirk. He's a good guy, but he was not playing at a level that I think that you could have really threatened a lot of teams.
And this goes back to the original part of the conversation, which is stop worrying about, we can eliminate Atlanta or Dallas just by winning one of those two games and get to the playoffs. No, actually, if you win this week, you marginalize that team before you ever play them. For sure.
And I mean, you can clinch a spot by winning this week if Atlanta loses. And who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
And listen, we don't, again.
They almost lost to the Raiders the other day. You never know.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they're not, I know their schedule is easy, but they're not playing well. That to me is key. It's about how you're playing when you're playing, because there's not a big margin of difference between these teams. So I think that's something to watch too. But yeah, take care of business this week and then you're fine.
All right, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Bram.
Let me welcome in my friend, Philadelphia sports radio legend, John Kincade from The Fanatic up in Philly. You are so kind, John. You always come on during our Philly weeks here. I appreciate it. Nice to speak with you again.
Well, I always reach out to you, too, and say, I need you for my show. So you are just as kind. And legend means old. So we got to think of a different word, just accomplished.
Accomplished?
Accomplished Philadelphia radio host.
How about icon? You want icon? Can I give you that one?
I don't think I'm an icon here. Okay. Maybe I'll call it for the industry. Maybe I could be an
industry.
Icon.
All right, sounds good.
If this interview goes well, you can make that judgment.
I mean, how old are you? I'm in my 50s. How old are you? 50s?
I'm going to be 60 on Monday.
Oh my God! All right, so you got me beat by a mile. The fact that we're both doing this, I always say this all the time. Now,
look so young though. It's
I know.
Amazing.
I look great. I can't speak for you. I look really terrific.
I just saw you. I eyeballed you, and you do. You've got great skin. Ram,
Thank you.
I'm telling you.
Appreciate that.
Good legacy there.
All right. Everybody wants me to stop talking about us. Okay, here we go. You got to explain something to me. And maybe it's just the media, but you guys haven't lost in 11 weeks. And I swear to God, every week there's some kind of story about this guy's unhappy with this, or this isn't right, or that's off, or this isn't good, or there's something wrong. So can you help me out here why 12-2 isn't the greatest thing on earth? I don't understand it.
Well, the what I would tell you is 12-2 is the greatest thing on earth, but 12-2 is also where the team has had a series of self-inflicted wounds. Unlike any other season, the Philadelphia media gets none of the blame this year for any of the nonsense that's gone on. It's all been self-inflicted either by Nick Sirianni, who we talked about like the last time we visited together leading up to the first meeting in Philadelphia. Nick Sirianni had a real rough year. They were 2-2 going into the bye week. We find out that not only did the offensive linemen have to, corral him during the bye week to say, we forget that we can run the football. Can we stop having Jalen throw 35 times a game? Let's run the ball. That's our strength. And then we also find out now from another story that Jay Glazer broke that you had to have a visit from Brandon Graham and Big Dom, who of course inserts himself into every story, to help Jalen Hurts realize that he has to do better to connect with his teammates. So then we had A.J. Brown saying what needs to improve, the passing. And then so everyone takes that as a controversy. Uh-huh. The players on this team, they're very charismatic. Everything's very big here. Anything that's said is always going to be a little more amplified. But the players and the coaches have done all of the damage this year as far as to creating the drama. Unfortunately, I can't take credit for any of it.
But the weird part is, and I've been saying this down here a lot because we saw what happened last year. And everyone's waiting for that to happen again. And I go, hit me up when they lose. Because until they actually lose, there is no real problem there. And they haven't lost in a long time.
It's not happening, and they're the best team in football. And I honestly don't think it's close that they're the best team in football. And that's because I'm taking into consideration when I say that, the Detroit injuries. if Detroit was completely healthy, Detroit had shown that they were the best team. And the Eagles right now would be ascending to a point where they could be in the same conversation. But the Eagles, thankfully, have been pretty healthy, and they just continue to win, and they have extreme balance. They have an amazing balance on both sides of the ball. Like, people are telling me about Buffalo and saying, well, Buffalo's given up 86 points the last 2 weeks. And yes, it's great to watch all that offense. The Eagles have given up 86 points in their last 5 games, and that includes beating 4 playoff teams, which the Commanders were the first of them. I mean, beating the Commanders, beating the Rams in L.A., and if they didn't get a touchdown in the last minute of the game in garbage time, they had scored 13 points. Same thing for Baltimore. They go into Baltimore's house. They hold Lamar to 12 points. He scores within the 2-minute warning at the end of the game, a garbage touchdown to make it 19.
Lamar looked terrible against them. He looked terrible against them.
Well,
yeah.
What's weird is that I truly believe, and I'm not being a homer here, because I think I will call it as I see it. They made Lamar look horrible.
I agree with you.
They confused the hell out of him, and it was weird because he got hesitant, and I think from some of the commentary that I saw afterwards, he was seeing a lot of different looks that he didn't expect, and that's Vic Fangio. And I got to tell you, that's sort of what I saw in our first meeting when we got a chance to see Jaden Daniels, that I think there were things that were confusing him. But I also think that Jaden may have been a little banged up still from the rib thing or whatever, because he really wasn't very take off and run either.
I'll give you my side on that, and you can just tell me if you could, because, all right, so Jaden got injured, in the middle of the season. He played through it, but he wasn't himself, all right? And then he's a rookie, so it's kind of hard to know, like, what's it going to look like on the other side? Like, you don't really know. Like, it takes, who is this person really? And that Philadelphia game was the most poorly timed thing they could have ever had, because it was a Thursday night. They had just played Pittsburgh. Right. They had a lot of injuries. This team was screaming for a bye week. Like, they needed it so bad. Like, the injuries were piling up. He wasn't fully healthy yet. I'm telling you, if you've watched him the last 2 games that he's played, he looks a lot more like the guy that was doing what he was doing in week 3, week 4, week 5. So it's kind of my position that I will throw to you, that you're going to see the real Jaden Daniels this time. You saw a different version of him the first time.
I think if you're grading him on a rookie scale, there ain't any way that kid is not walking away with an A. From what I watch the Commanders a lot more often. Not only I have a slight affinity for Dan Quinn, but I would believe that you guys are not only the only threat to us this year, you're the only threat to us probably the next year or 2, as Dallas is going to have to really retool, and the Giants are just an abysmal dumpster fire. So to me, like, I'm keeping an eye on you guys because I know you guys are going to be a problem, and that young man was a problem. And my listeners would tell you that all last year leading up to the draft, I kept saying, I hope Chicago wises up and takes Jaden Daniels, because then I may only have to navigate him once every few years or when they get good in the playoffs. I did not want him in the division because I think you guys absolutely got it right.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you this then. Okay, no one's done it yet, but let's say someone slows down Saquon Barkley and the run game. Can Jalen Hurts win pivotal high leverage games throwing the ball?
Yeah, sure he did. Did you see Super Bowl 57? It's like one of those things, like, and he was the better quarterback on the field that day.
I agree. I thought he got way too much because he had a fumble. Everybody got all this heat on him. And
I think I still get the skunk eye from him because of that. They lost that Super Bowl by 3. And he fumbled and gave them 7 gift points that Patrick Mahomes didn't. So I think that I always bring that up and say he made the big mistake that Patrick Mahomes
if your defense stopped the Chiefs once in the second half, literally once, you win.
They did.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I can promise you this, and we talked about it a little bit today. If Vic Fangio's defense was in that Super Bowl, the Eagles would have won in a blowout. And it almost was a blowout in the first half. Then the fumble came, and it swung the entire game. And they would have won that in a blowout with this defense because they are really, really exciting.
Okay, but let me go back to ask this question, because you answered it by saying something that happened 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And in the interim, we've had what you talked about earlier. This guy might not like that guy, and Big Dom's got to come and talk to somebody, and Sirianni's an administrator, and he's not allowed to coach. And so things are different now. So, like, again, let me ask the question again. If somehow somebody slows down Saquon Barkley, which is no certainty that anyone's going to do it, but if they did in a high leverage game, can Jalen Hurts in the passing game win if they have to?
Well, I think that Jalen Hurts in the passing game won the game on Sunday against the Steelers. And the Steelers are supposed to be arguably one of the top 5 defenses in football, probably.
Yeah.
They came out and just threw the ball, and they threw them. And Jalen Hurts was the one aggressively leading that attack. And then once they got the lead and it was comfortable, then they just choked the life out of the Steelers. I got to tell you, I've never seen anything like that fourth quarter the other day, where the Birds got the ball with 10:25 to go in the game and ran out the clock. Pittsburgh didn't touch it. They snapped the ball. The Steelers, who could go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC, they snapped the ball 11 times in the second half. I've never seen anything like it. No wonder Tomlin was wearing his sunglasses outside in the dark. I still can't figure that one out. But it was a mind-numbing effort. It was the worst defeat, by the way, in yardage differential in Mike Tomlin's career.
Wow.
And I don't know if you knew that one. The Eagles out yardaged them by like 240.
Wow.
Or 250. I mean, it was a blowout of epic proportions, but the Eagles had had a fumble and another turnover by Cooper DeJean, one of the exciting whites, as they're called here in Philadelphia. The secondary. And hey, they were named by C.J. Gardner-Johnson and everybody, so that's allowed. And that defense has been wild. Those shirts you can't find one. They're the hottest shirts in town. You can't.
Well, I mean, your fan base will buy anything that's Eagles related, and you know that. Like, you guys put tattoos under your lips. I mean, like, come on, like there's nothing your fan base won't do, which I'm jealous of. Don't get me wrong, I'm jealous of it. I am.
Well, I really believe, and I said it to you. I said it to you when you got new ownership, and then now you got Jaden Daniels. And now you got a guy in Dan Quinn who, at times thought probably I was the Antichrist, but he's a really good dude and a good coach. You guys are putting enough things together that I think that passionate Washington fan base that I grew up with, that I was terrorized by when the Eagles weren't even in the same zip code of the class of the Washington, at the time, the Redskins. And I believe pieces are being put together where you guys are going to become a world pain in the butt again.
Oh yeah. No. I think I think this game's a big deal for Washington, win or lose. I think partially because I think it's going to be the two of them for a little while here. And
I do too.
And I also feel like, and this is where I've landed on this one, because everyone around here is just psyched that they're probably going to make the playoffs, because who knew? Right. Year one, rookie quarterback, new coach.
You should be psyched.
We are.
By that.
But I will say this, like, there is a point, though, because after what we saw them do in the beginning of the season, which was, oh my God, is this real? And that was really based on Daniels is so far ahead of the curve. And then they've overcome the lull in the middle of the year. It's baked in they were going to go up and down. They've turned around and become what looked like the team from early in the season. I see the warts, and they're not a finished product. Their roster's not Philadelphia's. Like, I get that, and I totally understand that. However, you want to send a message about what the future looks like, you win on Sunday at home against a really, really, really good team and show everybody, hey, we're here now, and we're not going anywhere regardless of how this year plays out.
They win this game on Sunday, it would be huge for the Commanders. Absolutely huge. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it did, that would be a huge building block. But honestly, the fact that you're a pest, the fact that you are in the mix with a team that's really this good, and honestly, this might be the best that they've put together, it is in a little while. It's a testament to what is being built there.
Go look at our cap space next year, and go look at all the draft picks we have next year, and think about what you're looking at right now. Like, this is a completely like restructured roster. Like, this wasn't supposed to happen this fast. So,
well, here's what it wasn't supposed to happen that fast. Here's the one thing though, is that the difference will be the playoff schedule next year. So, I mean, not to look ahead, that the bump up to playing the playoff team schedule next year will be different. Expectations that are on a team. But the idea, too, is that the difference is that the Eagles are young on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
So they're not going anywhere.
Right.
They've got draft picks, and they've got and Howie, I swear to you, he's got to deal with the mob. Because they can always find money.
I gotta tell you though, even like in the new NFL, playing the playoff schedule. So just think about this for a moment. Minnesota's probably going to win the NFC North now because of all the Detroit injuries, right? Well, next year,
I do not believe that. I believe Detroit's going to be the 1 seed.
I think Minnesota's going to beat them at the end of the year, and they're going to get it.
Yeah, but the thing is, remember, if Detroit
just because of injuries,
if Detroit wins their next 2, which they should. At the Bears, at the 49ers. They're terrible. Both of those teams are terrible. And if they win those 2 games, Minnesota's got to win their 2 to make the last game even matter.
That's right.
If they don't win, the last game doesn't even matter. Detroit wins if any combination of 2 of their wins and 1 loss.
But I think Minnesota, I don't think their schedule's like now that Seattle's all banged up, I don't think their schedule's crazy either. Like it's very possible that they're going to end up playing. I want Minnesota to come into South Philly so badly. Well, I mean,
I honestly, I want to see the Vikings as a team. I would be more concerned with the Commanders than the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, to your point though about the playoff schedule, which was I was trying to get to the point of, and I got sidetracked for a moment. Like Minnesota could win that division, so they'd be the 1 seed, right? Like they'd be the 1. You'd play them next year. We'd play Detroit, But if it flips, we'd play Minnesota. You don't know what Minnesota's going to be next year. You literally don't know what they're going to be next year.
J.J. McCarthy, I have no idea.
Right.
So I mean, you don't know what that's going to be. I know this is that I've already after the game with the Rams, and then after the game with the Ravens, and then after the game with the Steelers, we have made a reservation for dinner in New Orleans every single time.
Have you? All right.
So after every game, we then go, okay, look, I've been to Super Bowls in New Orleans. I've been to 3 of them. Here's where you want to eat.
Well,
so we've gone, okay, we're going to do GW Fins this night. Bram, I'm this confident. I'm not playing just messing around with you.
Okay.
I'm this confident.
I think you should be.
I think they're the best team in football, and I don't think it's honestly that big a debate.
Okay. Well, then I'll leave you with this then. Because if you were to lose this weekend, then in all likelihood, you're the 2 seed, not the bye, right?
And correct.
And in all,
they could have an easier path.
Well, but you got to play an extra game.
You got to play because you got to play the extra game.
Correct.
Which is what you don't want to have to do. But the thing is, let's say
it's going to be against us, though. Like you realize that, right?
I understand that. There's no problem. Beating a team 3 times in a year isn't hard. And if it was one, because people always say, beating a team, because I guarantee, let's say the Eagles beat the Commanders this weekend. Then everyone's going to go, if they meet in the playoffs, they're going to go, you're trying to beat a team 3 times in a year. When in all honesty, if anybody does their homework, that happens around 63% of the time. 64. It's not uncommon. The team that wins the first 2 out of 3 usually wins the 3rd matchup also.
Since we're really old people. All right. Well, since we're really old people, I was in the vet when the Redskins beat the Eagles up in the playoffs years and years
ago.
Buddy
Ryan, during Joe Gibbs, the great Joe Gibbs. I love Coach Gibbs, and I still think, arguably, the greatest coaching job the NFL has ever seen is his 11-year run, 4 Super Bowl appearances, 3 Super Bowl titles, 3 different quarterbacks.
None of them in the Hall of Fame. That's the last part of that sentence. None of those quarterbacks are in the Hall of Fame.
He is, and then what does he do? Then he goes to auto racing and he finds a way to just bring the same level of. So he's amazing, and I'll tell you, anytime I got to sit down with him and interview him and talk to him, I always told him, even as an Eagle fan, and I probably cursed him out. I think he is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so, wonderful man.
I think it's going to be a great game on Sunday. And by the way, you can just relax while you're broadcasting the game. I have told the Eagles fans for this home game, they should be very, very nice to the Commander fans that make it to the game. Make it to the game. Make them feel at home, because we like to make sure that our home stadium feels nice and comfortable to the visiting teams.
Oh, man.
It's nice, though. We appreciate the lower prices, though.
We
do appreciate that.
Things will be changing real fast. Enjoy this one. Things are changing really fast here.
I think it's going to. I told you. I absolutely think you speak the truth. I really do.
There's a couple new administrations coming into Washington these days, so just be careful. Be careful.
Tell Brian Johnson, Dan Quinn likes his coffee 2 creams, 1 sugar. Just make sure that's the way he likes it. Because last year, watching his offense, I swear it was more like 2 shots and a beer watching his offense. So we're very happy with Kellen Moore. So.
All right, John. As always,
I love you,
thank
buddy.
you.
Take care. Talk to you soon, man.
I want to spend a few moments here at the end of the show just talking about the NBA and one of my favorite topics to discuss, which I haven't done a lot of during football season, which is the media and what's happening in the media, having lived in a career in the media at the highest outlets like ESPN to the more regional mid-tier outlets here to the lower forms of it, starting my career in local television in small markets. And as someone who's also just an entrepreneur and someone who is in the new spaces of media, I like to follow all of these things and to kind of, I don't know, I just find it interesting, and I hope I can share some thoughts that are interesting on the NBA, of which is going through a cycle of negative coverage over the product, the ratings, its relevancy, and for a variety of different reasons, there's a number of different things that are placed out there as for the quote unquote downfall of the sport, of which I would push back and say to you, they're not in the space that people are portraying them to be in. This is not even remotely close to a league that is failing or a market correction or any of those things. Go look at what the television rights packages were that were negotiated upon that ultimately got Turner out of the main key broadcasting space for the NBA to show you what the value of the league actually is. But there are some cracks in the armor that are worth watching here. One is the ratings are down significantly. I was reading Sports Market Watch, which is a good blog about all this stuff, and theirs are down about 21%. But they put in context that there are a number of other sports that are also down. Women's college basketball, to start this particular season, is down 28%. I don't want to weigh in on what Sheila Johnson said about Caitlin Clark in the interview she did for Time. I probably could have spent some time talking about that, but it was utterly ridiculous, and it's been utterly ridiculous. And I've been talking about this since she entered the WNBA, that there seems to be this lack of awareness of what she brought to women's college basketball, and she's receiving accolades for doing as such. And I don't understand why everybody is pushing back so hard against her, because it's just so demonstrably true that that's what's happened with her. Anyway, their numbers, unsurprisingly, because she's not there, is down. The NHLs are also here in the early part of the season down, even though I think there's been an influx of interest and primetime athletes that they can focus on. And there's been a really good start for the Capitals, who have a namesake star. And, you know, don't get too in the weeds that we know that Alex Ovechkin's been hurt, but most of America doesn't understand that that's what's happened. Anyway, the NFL's doing well. Even college football's numbers are a little bit down. So I wanted to take a look at a couple of the other metrics that would, outside of just television ratings and surges and ups and downs in ratings, like what's happening with the NBA. And their attendance is not down. Like the lowest team on the list that's rated through the 2024-2025 season is averaging still nearly 17,000 fans per game. So that's the lowest number. The Wizards are still averaging 16 to 17,000 per game. And we're well aware that they are not trying to win right now, that they are tanking. Like they are doing the full-on tank, and it has not mattered that much in terms of their attendance. Maybe it's a tick lower, but it's not specifically lower. I don't know Monumental's ratings for the Wizards here specifically, and I'm not looking at the ratings regionally at all these different teams. I'm looking at the ratings nationally. There's been another, metric, or not metric. There's been talking points about the NBA as well. What's wrong with the game? Why have they had to turn to this cockamamie, midseason tournament that no one seems to overly care about, but then profess that they appreciate that they won when the Bucks did this year or the Lakers did last year. People say they just shoot too many threes, and you see all these examples on the internet of this like lackadaisical, almost, all-star game worthy moments in games where teams just run down court, chuck up threes, don't even like attempt to run any kind of semblance of an offense. Maybe the officiating is a little too harsh. The game isn't as physical as it was. Maybe you could argue that some of the stars that really resonate, LeBron James, who's not currently playing right now for undisclosed reasons, that some of them have reached an age where they're kind of aging out of relevancy, and it's pretty obvious. Like Kevin Durant's teams aren't performing particularly well. LeBron James' teams are not performing particularly well. He's older now. Steph Curry and the Warriors are still a story, but they haven't, maybe they're getting relevant again this year, but they haven't really been. The style of play is something that people are pushing back at. The young teams that are up and coming haven't quite had stars or brands attached to them that have made them extremely relevant. Like, I'll buy all of this, that all the style of play, relevancy of the stars, crowded marketplace for watching the games. They're split all over the place all the time. There's no appointment viewing anymore for any of these sports, really, with the exception of the NFL, who should be careful, in my opinion, of spreading a little too thin with what they have. They've got the golden goose when it comes to appointment viewing. But there's all these things. And then what came out yesterday ought to tell you all you need to know if the attendance numbers didn't tell you what you needed to know anyway. The Golden State Warriors came out as valued at $9 billion. I believe it was Forbes that did it. And obviously these numbers are all, it's eye of the beholder. It's what someone would pay for something. Remember, the Commanders sold for $6 billion. That's an NFL franchise, 90-year-old NFL franchise that owns their stadium. Okay. The Warriors going for 50% more than that. What would the Knicks sell for? What would the Lakers sell for if that's what that was? So when Jerry Jones said like a year ago, we're a priceless piece of art, basically, that we'd go for 10 to 12 billion, he's not wrong, because this is if that's what the NBA teams are worth and the high tier, high brand, high Q rating teams are worth, then this league is not in trouble and people still see it as extraordinarily valuable. What's going on with the ratings? I don't know. As someone who loves sport, I'll tell you, my chief complaint is style of play. That this is not overly competitive in the regular season between load management, the style of play, and what I would believe is just a perceptual lack of true care about what happens in the regular season, that it's just something to kind of get through. The games are just not exciting. There aren't matchups that you point to and go, I can't wait to see that, because that's a precursor to literally anything. The NBA playoffs are amazing, and I think you'll see the ratings pop back up, I think. But that's where I think we could have a problem. If it drags into the playoffs because the regular season has been neutralized so much that people aren't buying into the thread of the storyline until they get to the playoffs, that's when you have a problem. But for now, the valuations and the attendance tell you what you need to know about where the state of the league is. I think there are cracks in the armor here, and I think they need to be very careful about their product. And I think they're trying to think through with the All-Star game and this midseason tournament and load management rules. I think they're trying to think through, okay, we recognize that this is a trend that's beginning. There are alarming flashpoints, and we're going to try our best to do something about it before it gets to the point where they have a problem with their money-making moments, the playoffs themselves. Because if the people tune out enough that the playoffs lose a fraction or a large fraction of the viewership at the time of year when it matters most, that's when they'll have a problem. And call me when that happens, because I don't think it's going to. Because everything else right now is suggesting the league's actually fine, even chief among all the complaints. All right, talk to you tomorrow. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.